We have many so-called soft targets. The soft target is one where they're just civilians, where there's not a guard, where it's not defended. And of course, the parade route of a marathon is a soft target. What about these kids? But let's call it what it is. There was an op-ed piece by Mr. McCasey, who used to be head of the intelligence branch of our government. We don't call it jihad any longer. These guys, that Major Nadal screamed Allahu Akbar, you know, and then he started shooting, and we said it looked like a civilian rage or something. I mean, it's crazy. We've got to identify the fact that we've got enemies, and the enemies are Islamists, and they are being pushed to these extreme points by radical imams in mosques. Well, our CBN News terrorism analyst, Eric Stakelbeck, is with us today. Eric, you wrote a book called The Terrorist Next Door. Does this attack underscore what you had to say?
Pat, I think it does. Look, I warned about this in the book 2 years ago about a homegrown jihadists, American citizens. These brothers, Pat, were here for 10 years. You would think they were very well assimilated, good students, student athletes, but their Chechen Muslim background. Something was stirred, apparently, in this older brother. Where was he radicalized, Pat? Key question. Was there an imam, some kind of figure here in Boston? We know he did the trip overseas, back to Chechnya, back to Dagestan in southern Russia, which are Al-Qaeda hotbeds. He was there for 6 months. Reportedly, he hooked up with some radical Islamic figures there, some terrorist figures there, and then came on back. Did he train over there? Was there bomb-making training over there? And the key question, why was the FBI not monitoring him any longer, Pat? In 2011, they interviewed him at the request of the Russian government. When a foreign government requests you watch this guy, you can't just let him go. A lot of unanswered questions here.
Eric, what is it you think they were trying to accomplish? Or did they accomplish what they were trying to set out to do?
I think they did partially, Pat. Look, they caused carnage at the Boston Marathon, killed 4 people, actually, including the officer, injured 180 more. They accomplished the goal of terrorism, psychological, economic. Terror. It shut down the city of Boston, Pat, a metro area of over 1 million people, right? These 2 guys, a 26-year-old and 19-year-old, were able to effectively shut down an entire metro area for the better part of a week. I would say mission accomplished. I hate to say it. They also dominated the news cycle, and also, look, with the explosives that were found after the one guy was killed, the other brought in, they had a lot more explosives on them, Pat. I think they had more planned. And another key point here, authorities also believe this cell may have been bigger. Up to 12 people may be involved in this cell. And something very overlooked, Pat, this weekend, there were more arrests in this case, connected to this case, on Friday and on Saturday in the Boston area. So we may not have heard the last of this cell.
What do you think about the action of the police work? It seems like they did an extraordinary job in getting these guys this fast. Am I right in that?
Absolutely, Pat. Look, our law enforcement, our intelligence agencies since 9/11, as Congressman King said in the package before, look, 16 plots in New York City alone broken up since 9/11. That is phenomenal police and intelligence work. And I can tell you, Pat, you and I have talked about it here in the club. Since 2009, there have literally been dozens of Islamic terror plots broken up involving U.S. citizens here on American soil. So we owe a big tip of the hat to our law enforcement, our intelligence agencies. But look, what happened in Boston, Pat, I hate to say it, it was bound to happen. We've had such a string of success in breaking up these plots and a good deal of luck. I'm not shocked, unfortunately, that one finally slipped through. And I still want answers about why this older brother, the ringleader in this plot, was not monitored further. Look, our intelligence agencies have done a good job, but the ball was dropped here. The ball was dropped in Fort Hood, Pat, where they were monitoring the Fort Hood shooter for months. before that rampage, and also Anwar al-Awlaki, the al-Qaeda cleric involved in 9/11. He was being monitored, but he was allowed to leave the country. So not a perfect record, but a good record overall.
Michael Mukasey was saying in this op-ed piece that it looks like the FBI is dropping the ball, or else there's some civilian influence to downplay the Islamic roots of these things. They're all Islamic. Every one of them is Islamic. These aren't coming out of Irish separatists.
No, Pat, it's maddening. It's maddening. I hope the average American is furious about this, because our chattering classes, the media, the Obama administration, first of all, the president won't call it terrorism out of the gate. Second of all, our so-called mainstream media, they're trying their best, Pat, still to distance these attacks, this jihadi attack, from Islam. They're saying, I'm reading op-eds still, Pat, over the weekend saying, hey, we don't know these guys' motivations. Even though they are Chechen, a radical Islamic hotbed, even though they had al-Qaeda websites that they were surfing, their Facebook pages were saying Allahu Akbar, etc. The bombings had all the hallmarks of Middle Eastern terror bombings, but we don't know if Islam motivated them. Pat, their own mother, these two brothers, their own mother, said that the older brother, quote, loved Islam and became more religious over the past few years. I have to say, Pat, it seems the more someone loves their Islam and the more someone takes their Islam seriously, the more problems we have.
Eric, one last question. One judge said, well, you have distorted a great religion. Actually, these people were following exactly what the great religion told them to do, weren't they?
They were, Pat. Look, I think the radicals are the Muslims who are not committing jihad. If you read the Quran, you read the Hadiths, you read Islam's core texts, there are at least 40 verses in the Quran, Pat, calling on Muslims to wage jihad, holy war, against non-believers. What these two young men are doing and what Islamic terrorists around the world are doing are simply taking the teachings of Muhammad and the Quran literally. And if our government officials, our media, would actually read these core texts, they might discover that. I still don't think they'd admit it, though, and that's the sad part.
Well, let's hope they can read. Do you reckon the media can read? Eric, I appreciate that so much. Eric Stakelbeck, we're going to tell you the truth here, the way it is, ladies and gentlemen, but man, you get called some kind of a fanatic or bigot or something like that if you tell the truth. Sure, Islam is a religion, but at the same time, it is a system of world government. And we have to recognize the two go hand in hand. Muhammad wanted to take over. They had jihad to conquer people which they subjugated in order to establish their control. And that's what these people are doing, but it's horrible. If you've got a government and an FBI that refuses to acknowledge the problem. During the Second World War, we didn't have any problem saying Hitler was bad. No problem at all saying the Nazis were monsters. No problem. We were fighting the Nazis, and our job was to defeat the Nazis. And everybody in America was mobilized to defeat the Nazis. And then later on, the Japanese who'd come in, but primarily the Nazis. Now we're fighting a war, but we refuse to identify our enemy, even though it's in plain sight. Whew. Lee Webb has the rest of our